saw that. But this is the way I do it. It's a way I think that's safe. Um, we're going to be doing, well, first of all, I might say, um, especially I think for those of you who are new to turning or relatively new to turning, I think there's several ways things you need to do to learn to turn. And one of them I think that's important is to purchase good quality tools, even if it means just purchasing one rather than three or four at a time. But purchase good quality tools that have high speeds, that are made from high-speed steel, that'll hold a good edge, and they're probably at a minimum are M2 high-speed steel. And not all the tools on the market are like that, and many of those you'll spend a lot of time at your grinder trying to keep them sharp, versus if you go ahead and buy good quality steel. I think that the second thing you can do, probably should have wrote these down, but another thing you can do, I think, is to come to our Saturday demos. Hopefully there's going to be something of value in this demonstration tonight, something that you can take home with you. Maybe it will be an example of something I do inadvertently that you might say, well, geez, I don't ever want to do that, a mistake. But at our Saturday meetings over here, and I know a number of you come, and we meet the second and the fourth Saturdays, it can be very much a hands-on for you. You can bring your own tools in. You can use any of the lathes that we have, and we have a number of people around that can help you on Saturday mornings. And, we have a fellow in our club that we know him as just another one of us, but when you get to places like Provo, Utah, and other places like that, and you see Anthony turning, our president, up against other turners from around the world, you quickly realize that Anthony is every bit their equal. And Anthony is here on Saturday mornings, and you're really missing an opportunity if you don't come in and I think take advantage of that. Take advantage of the equipment that we have and the knowledge that we have, and some of it is absolutely outstanding. Now, he paid me to say that, but we know him as Anthony, but really other people, and Linda just mentioned this to me. She was in Airmont. Some lady there from England. Didn't catch her name. Julie Harrington knows Anthony. Really, everybody around the world knows Anthony, and of course we do. So, I mean, he really is he's an outstanding turner, and as I say, he's here on Saturday mornings. Okay. The other thing you can do, besides buy good quality tools, is to learn how to sharpen those tools and how to shape those tools to do whatever project it is that you have in mind. I know many times it doesn't seem fair, but you buy tools and off the shelf they're really not that sharp. And typically you don't have a method or a way of sharpening those tools to really do the job that you want. And there's a number of things, jigs and fixtures out there that can help you. I think it was last fall, the last issue last fall of the AAW Journal, there was an article in there by a guy named Kirk DeHer, and he was suggesting a system of sharpening that was repeatable, was accurate even as your wheel wore down, was transportable from one sharpening system to another as long as there was a 6-inch separation from the middle of the wheel to the top of your sharpening jig. And, I'd been sharpening tools for a long time, was using them okay. But when I saw that, I thought, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to switch. And so to get ready for all you folks tonight, I switched all my my angles and my bevels and so forth. And you know, there's a bit of a learning curve, but so far I like it. But so, you know, who knows what might happen. But the way that system works, and so many times we're so anxious to get started on the projects that we don't take the time to learn to do those things. They're going to really make the projects go well if we would. And sharpening is one of those. But the way that system works is it's just cutting some pieces of 3/4 inch plywood, setting this on the Wolverine system. This is your wheel. This is the back of the Wolverine. This notch is cut to give you the 2-inch gauge to get your tool sticking out of something like the true grind jig at the proper length. And then this gives you your angle on the bevel, on the nose of your tool. And then as you swing it around, this is set 23 degrees, and it never moves from the bottom of the tool to the top of this, whether it's the Wolverine or the true grind or whatever it is. And that gives you your side grind. And I don't know if y'all can, you can't not see that very effectively, but it's not a bad grind. And as I say, it's repeatable. So this is what I'm using now. I have a 50-degree bevel here. I think when Mike Mahoney was here, he was suggesting a 45 or a 40. I tried that. I really didn't like that. But a 40 or the 50 degree seems to work real well for me. So you just have to kind of play around with some of this stuff too. But sharpening is important. And then I think the last thing you need to do as a beginning turner to improve your effectiveness is to learn how, and this is mainly through practice, and this is something that would occur on Saturday mornings over here, is to know what to expect is going to happen when you stick that tool up to the piece of wood. And, you know, we all get surprised at that from time to time. You may see that tonight. But with some degree of accuracy, if you know if the wood's on here and you stick this thing up here at a certain angle, certain things are going to happen most of the time. And most of those are good, is a little bit of a comfort, and will help you with your turning. So anyway, I'm through with the preaching. We're going to turn this evening a bowl from a crotch. This is a piece of cherry. It was a small piece of cherry. So normally I think if you were going to turn a crotch or a fork in the tree to a platter or to a bowl, you would not include the pith in it. We're going to include the pith tonight just so we'll have a little bit of size. But normally, I think with a crotch, your best feather, your best grain is going to be in the older part of the wood for the most part. And let's say the inner 60 to 70% of the wood. So I think normally, as I say, the pith would not be included. It would be more or less towards the bottom of the bowl or the platter. Great. There you can kind of see it. Normally you would turn this where, you know, your tenon or however you're going to hold it would be about right here, and knowing the full well that that's going to eventually be wasted away, and your best graining, your best feather is in this older part of the wood, so you don't want to turn the entire center part of it away. You want to get rid of all the pith eventually, but leave just this side of the pith would be the bottom of your bowl or the bottom of your platter or whatever it is that you're going to do. It would normally give you the best looking thing. If you were gonna if you're just looking at a log, and what we'll be doing will be called what I call a side grain. But another typical or common type of bow that's done is something that would be called an end grain. There we go. End grain could include the pith. It certainly doesn't have to if your log is big enough, or it just depends on what you're turning. But you're going to grab the piece of wood you're turning on the bottom of this, and you're going to be turning down into this. Would be end grain. It's turned differently than side grain in that typically it's from the bottom out rather than from the top in. The reason for that is the way the wood fibers support as you're making those kinds of cuts. But what we're going to be doing is called an end grain. This would be a typical bow. The bottom of the bow could be the outside of the log, or it could be the inside of the log. You know, once you split it, then it's going to look something like this. You're going to cut a blank out, something like this. I think you can see that. Typically, the wood is green, so you're going to do a process called twice turning. You're going to turn the first bowl, and you're going to leave it thick, and you're going to dry it through some method, and that could be a whole another session, but most people just kind of lay it up and see what happens. Depends on the kind of wood also, I think, as far as the method that you pick to dry. People use microwaves, they boil, they freeze, they just set up, they do a number of things. Put it in a paper bag, put it in a plastic bag. Freezes, yeah. I think what you're trying to do is slow it down enough. It's going to have a tendency to dry faster out the end grain. When that happens, it can crack there pretty easily. So you're trying to slow down the end grain and let the side grain catch up with it, and so that it'll dry somewhat concentrically without cracking. And then eventually you're going to turn something out of it. Now, I brought some examples of different bows. I had to borrow this from Anthony. This is a typical what the graining pattern would look like on an end grain bow. In other words, the tree is growing like this. Anthony hollowed down into it, and you can see all the growth rings. He left the pith in, so you can see all the growth rings around it. Here's a side grain bow that kind of makes Anthony angry when he sees it. His automatic reaction is negative towards it, but I think it's the contemporary sides and the traditional top. I'm not sure. I'm just kidding. But this is a side grain walnut bow. You can leave all kinds of features in there if you want. This is kind of what we're going to be doing tonight. This is a crotch in a shingle oak. The tree was dead and left standing for a number of years and then was chopped down recently. So it has a high water content, but it's more or less free water. It's not bound water within the cell walls of the plant. So it has a tendency to dry fairly fast. This is not dry. It was turned maybe a week ago. Do we want to do pass around? We want to do pass around? Okay, if we're going to do pass around, here's the way it's going to work. I always sit on this side over here, and we always get stuff last. So tonight, we're going to start over here. Now, Don, when it comes back to you, you pass it to the guy right behind you. He's going to send it down, and eventually we'll get this whole side of the room done. And then it'll come over here, and it'll work its way right back up to Russ, and he'll bring it right back up there. Dead last. Now, does anybody have any questions about that? Okay. That way, yeah. I'll be watching. All right. This is the other bowl I was talking about. It was turned probably a month ago, and I left it in a bag for a week or so and then took it out. And there's some, I know you can't see this, there's some change in it, but it's not really too significant. But when I put the moisture meter on that, it was still showing. It would peg out at 30%, so it was something in excess of 30%, but that was all free water, I suppose. Here's another kind of bowl. Now, yeah. This bowl was cut from the bottom or the butt end of the log. So when it cracked, I wasn't really, terribly surprised at that since it came from the butt end. I apologize. Have y'all heard the joke about the two Czechoslovakians on top of the Empire State Building? Oh, you've heard that one. They got better memories than I thought. That was Anthony's joke last month. He hasn't told one yet this month, and I'm not sure if we're going to get one or not. You want to come up and tell your joke, Anthony, or? All right, here we go. Pray for me. Huh? Yeah. That's a green blank. That's right. And when I unwrapped that about 15, 20 minutes ago, it wasn't cracked at all. But already in the pith, there's beginning, it'll just be right on the surface, but it's already beginning to crack a little bit. This is a bowl just for demonstration. This isn't something that'll end up, more than likely. Okay, we're going to start off kind of slow until we get it smoothed down. Rotate our thing. I should say that we're held on here with a screw chuck that's secured in the stronghold chuck, and then that's got a 3/8 hole, and the blank is ran up on it. That's pretty secure in itself, but then when you take that and you run your live center, your tail center up against it, then that's a pretty darn safe way to hold anything, even if it's not perfectly balanced. The only way it would ever come off, I think, if something mechanical went wrong or the piece just split down the middle, and that's not very likely with a piece of wood like this. So you guys are safe, I think. We're going to start off to smooth this down using a pull cut from the bottom up. Don't ever try to come into a piece like this and go across. You've seen people do that, and that's a pretty bumpy ride. You'll get there eventually, but that's pretty bumpy. Whereas a pull cut starting back on this edge here and coming up will at least get us fairly smooth, get us perfectly round, and then we will use a push cut up from the bottom to get really our best surface. Before I go any farther, have I got a cleanup crew tonight? All right. I'm going to assume that's yes. Good idea to keep your tool rest. I don't have any idea what that was, but I think it was something internal. Always rotate your piece, and there's the perfect example why. How are we doing on pass around? Oh, okay. On the pull cut, the bevel's not necessarily rubbing. Can rub, I think, but it's not necessary because we're going to really smooth it up with the push cut. Well, we're still not balanced because the blank isn't cut perfectly square, but we're doing pretty good. Probably we can turn up a little more speed here pretty quick. Is it okay?
Yeah, you're running on the high speed.
Oh, really?
You don't have much torque.
Yeah. Yeah.
Keep talking, I'll change.
Okay. I'm supposed to talk. I'm supposed to. The Czechoslovakians on top of the Empire State Building got in a scuffle up there. I don't remember how it ended up.
We're done.
We're done. Okay, that's. It always helps to have a good handler. This is the bottom. I guess I didn't explain that, but this will be the bottom of the bow. We're eventually going to form a tenon on here, and we'll turn it around and grab it, and then we'll do the hollowing. And if you guys have any questions, look at the difference that made. Just shout them out. If I don't know the answer, somebody in here will, or we'll make something up. If you're making a cut and it's not necessarily going as well as you think, you might try adjusting your tool rest a little bit up or a little bit down. You basically want to be cutting at center, maybe slightly above, but basically at center, really never below. Again, we're just smoothing it up now. But we're getting pretty close to cutting our tenon on here and deciding our bottom. Mike Mahoney says for a functional bow, the base, what it sets on, should be 50 or 60% of the diameter of the bow. You'll see a lot that aren't that way. Maybe they're just for aesthetic reasons. You want to spend quite a bit of time getting that tenon as true as you can, and it'll make life easier for you when you turn it around. It'll run a lot truer once you actually flip it around. Okay. This is a little 3/8 spindle gouge. Okay, there's our tenon. That's what we're going to hang on to. here comes our base pretty quick. Do we want a rim? Rim like the pass around? We want a rim? Okay, we want a rim? Feet? Okay. Before we actually do the push cut business, I'm going to turn this off. I'm going to cut this just as smooth as I can. There's our rim. Kind of hear that little tick, 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 tick. Generally, that means you're rubbing the bevel a little bit hard. So if you'll back off on it and not rub the bevel so hard, then you'll get rid of that and you can save yourself a lot of sanding. But you see this end grain? Starting here, that's not too bad there. Here the end grain, real rough. The side grain is pretty good. We're going to have to hurry because it's really cracking. So we're going to flip around and we're going to do kind of a final finishing cut here with a push. And then we'll look at the difference again. You can do that fast, but you don't gain a lot. When you turn it around, you're going to have another opportunity to smooth the thing up. But many times if this cut's okay and your foot is pretty carefully constructed, many times you can just sand. But I don't know, can you see the difference in that cut? You guys up on front can. I mean, the pull cut left it very rough in these regions right here. And the push cut, for whatever reason, bevel rubbing, I suppose, really smooths that out. Oh, no. I think it would, yes. I think it would if it was a wood that was really prone to cracking. Cherry's kind of like that, actually. I want to be sure. When you turn this around, you don't want this part of your tenon to hit the bottom of your chuck. If that does occur, you lose a lot of your holding power. You want the face of these jaws to bottom out right here, and that this will land short of the back of the base of the jaws, and that's going to be your best holding power. So we're going to take just a hair off here just to be sure. That's a technical term. And we're going to be sure that this is still as smooth as we can get it. That's a little bit of a dovetail. We don't really want that. All right. So far, so good. We're going to leave this because we'll come back to that when we come back and flip this thing all the way back around and get ready to turn the bottom, to get rid of this tenon and to do whatever we're going to do on the bottom. Now you can see that holds pretty good. A lot of guys don't use the tailstock when they use the screw chuck. I don't know, I'd say why not? It's just another redundant safety issue or safety system. I also was going to mention on the area of safety, these are safety glasses. These are safety glasses that you can buy real cheap. That are, if you wear, you know, if you need a correction, these have a correction to them. So something like that at a minimum. If you're turning something that's really punky and rotten, I would suggest a face shield. And when you get down to the sanding part, at minimum, some sort of dust protection. That little mask there cost, I think, $30 or something like that. You can get them cheaper than that. They just, you know, that's rewashable. So we'll run that up there. Be sure that it's mashed, pressed, right up against the base of here. We can see, you can see, I think you can see. No, you can't see. But we're short of the base of the jaws about a 1/16 or 1/8 of an inch, something like that. Okay. We're going to keep that up there for just a little bit longer. Now we're going to square off the face of the blank. Rotate it. It doesn't clear. That's kind of important. Now we're reset. Turn our speed down. Turn it back up. I think you can see that that's running true enough that really no additional shaping. This is sandable, and this is the time to do the sanding, because as we relieve the pressure by taking the fibers out of the middle of this thing, then this is going to change again. So this will be the only time that you'll have with most woods, even if it's dry, no matter how thick you leave the walls. This will be your best opportunity to sand that while it's still smooth, running smooth. Again, we're cutting at center. And the way we're doing that is, I mean, this bevel that the cutting point, the bevel behind the cutting point that we're using is more or less at a 90-degree angle from your spindle. And if it's not, many times you'll get a different kind of reaction. And we've all been there. You can do it. You can pull that cut, or you can push it. Russ is doing his part. Okay, we're going to start hollowing it out now. Again, we're going to be cutting at about center. Let me raise that just a hair. We'll see. Toy around with this. If you want, we're not going to do it tonight, but it's not a bad idea. Head and drill down through the center, down to pretty close to where you want your wall thickness to be. That way you've got a gauge as you come down through here. It's not always clear exactly where you're at. Usually you can tell good enough, but that's a pretty absolute way. And you know when you get to the bottom of that hole, you need to start kind of being careful. I wouldn't normally use all these tools, but you know, to avoid sharpening and stuff like that, I think we're going to be okay with that. We can go ahead and give it some more speed now. There's any number of ways to start the hollowing process. You can roll your tool completely over. Again, line this part of the edge that you're going to use for cutting up with your spindle, and it won't go shooting off to the side. I think it will. Is it going to eject? Okay. Oh, boy. I prefer to use something about halfway in between that. And I'm about right here. But again, you know, the principle's the same. If you start here like this, then you're going to roll the tool up, then you're going to roll the tool back over. And that can be kind of fun, but it also can be tiring. You start there, you more or less are right at the same spot. I did that on purpose. Come towards the middle. You can actually undercut the middle and come up and take that little spigot off. We're just trying to get rid of a lot of wood right now. I'm going to lower it just a hair and see if that doesn't help us out. We get a little bit more of this out. Now this is green wood. I'll guarantee you, if it was dry, this wouldn't be going nearly this well. You're really trying to rub your bevel all the way. We're not trying to be pretty, we're just trying to get as much of that wood out of there as fast as we can. Now right here we need to start deciding how thick we want the walls on our bow. Makes a difference on how we, you see we still got an inch or inch and a quarter in the bottom. If we want real thin walls, then we'll take this down with the hollowing process starting about right here. We'll go down in about 1 or 1 1/4 inch increments. The reason for that thinner it gets as you go on down there, the more those walls are going to flex. Y'all are being awful quiet. They've already happened. All right, that'll just put our cutting edge a little closer to the wood surface we're cutting. What was the first question I asked? And I got nods of approval. You guys get the idea here. I don't know how much. We're cutting on that bottom bevel, that bottom cutting edge. It's possible to cut on the other side, especially if you have a little bit of a ridge or something in there you need to take out. Just be kind of careful with it and don't engage, for sure, don't engage that whole cutting edge. You're probably only going to engage 1/8 of an inch right up here. About 1/8 of an inch up here. 3, 4, counting the spindle gouge. The only reason for that is I don't have my sharpener here. And I said that system I was suggesting is portable, transferable from one sharpening thing to another. But the thing that's critical is the 6-inch difference between the center of the wheel and the top of the Wolverine. And this is a 5 1/4 or something like that. So I would not get the same grind off of that. So that's the only reason. If I was home, I'd be using 1 or 2 tools. I'm like a lot of wood turners. I've got a lot of tools hanging on the wall, and I probably use a half a dozen of them. But you go to these shows, and somebody you have respect for recommends this or recommends that, you have a tendency to buy it. Well, it has done exactly what we thought it was going to do. It's cracked pretty good in there. We're going to go ahead and take a little bit more of this out, but we got to finish that bottom. We're not going to end up with anything anyway. And I want to show y'all turning the tenon off the bottom of that. I've told y'all before, and it's true. I signed my bowls instead of on the bottom. Sometimes right there in the center with a little divot or a little hump. And when you see that, you know Jerry turned it. That's a joke. But it's also true. If we were going to use a scraper in this bowl, we're not, but if we were, I would use it, put it to good use across from the center out to what I kind of call the transition zone where the sides start back up. It's at that point that the wood will have changed shape pretty significantly. And I have found if you try to bring the scraper on up the edge, then you're going to have a pretty terrific catch. And, yeah. So kind of remember that, you know. I was going to show you, and then I'm going to go to the end, how to kind of pick up the cut on the other side here, and the gouge is over a little bit. You can stick it in there, and you can tell we're rubbing the bevel, but we're not cutting nothing until we roll it up. And do you see that? That will allow you to, before it changes shape a lot, to really get in there and smooth that up pretty good. All right. Oops. That wasn't good. Are there any questions about any of that? I do. I'm sorry. I turn it on a jam chuck, reverse it on a jam chuck. And several months ago, Jim Faraday was up here. I used to use a piece of rubberized closet shelving stuff as a buffer between the wood and here to keep it from marring it. But Jim used a piece of, what do you call that? It's kind of, you can use it to burnish or sand a little bit. Scotch, whatever it's called. It works pretty good right here. I think if you had a real bad bottom, you might could, yeah, just leave it a little loose and grab your bowl and sand it. All right. One thing that's kind of important is to check and just be sure how true we're running. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you want it to be pretty good. And you can see that's pretty good. We don't need a lot of pressure here. And as we go along, we're going to relieve some of that pressure. But you always run the risk of this little spigot here, the longer it gets and the thinner it gets, it can break off. It's not that it can break off, it will break off. Okay? Turn our speed back down. And we won't turn it back up as fast as we had it. This can be done like this, or you can push into it. If you're going to do any decorating, now's the time to do her. started leaving these little buttons in the bottom of them a couple of weeks ago. Kind of like that. I don't know. Some people will roll beads, make little grooves, little V grooves. I mean, it's kind of whatever your personal taste dictates. You can see that on the outside of this rim, she's not running as true as we'd like to see her. So we'll take one more try at it. And that's better. See the way that's coming off of there and not in cuts, but it looks like it's more or less tearing out of there. We'll see. You can use that other bevel to pick up a cut there also. And take that down as thin as your nerves will allow. We haven't embarrassed ourselves totally yet, so I think we'll stop right there. It's a good idea not to resist the urge to just knock that off, because many times it'll tear down into the wood. You can just gently remove it. Are there any questions? That's it. Thank you.